Well, my apologies. I made the first faux pas. I forgot to hit recording. So, but we are being recorded. Hey, everybody. My name is Hamid with Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, he, him. And we've been following some protocols because of some obnoxious Zoom bombing that we have experienced. But for the last couple times, we've been kind of keeping the mics and chat open. So, with the understanding that we are in family and community, in camaraderie, so we will respect the space and not start Zoom bombing it. So just welcome to the webinar, and I will pass it back on to Tiff. And this is being recorded. It'll be uploaded on the website stoplapdspying.org by Saturday of this week. So this is webinar number 79. Thank you.
Woohoo! Wow, that's a lot of webinars. Welcome, Susan. Thank you, Hamid. And okay, so we will go over the agenda, but first, before we do that, I just wanted to let folks know about our additional meetings that we do have here at the Coalition. So on the first Tuesday of the month, we have a meeting for our gender and sexuality crew, and that is looking at how folks are surveilled and policed, and sometimes even how we're policing each other through the lens of gender and sexuality. So that's the first Tuesday of the month. On the second Tuesday, it is the fight against the war on youth, and that looks at how youth are targeted and surveilled through such programs as CVE, Countering Violent Extremism, and additional programs. On the third Tuesday, we have the Coalition General Meeting, and then the fourth Tuesday is us, the Data-Driven Policing. These are all open meetings, and we do love to have folks join us whenever they like, and they're open to anyone, so please do join or get in touch with us for more information as well. So that's just an overview on some of our other meetings here. And so for today, for the webinar, we are excited to be talking about the Coalition's latest report, which is Automating Banishment, the Surveillance and Policing of Looted Land. And that report has been very much building on work that has been done over a period of years here, and in the community, and we are excited to be talking more about that release and our plans around that. Before we get to that, however, we are going to be talking with our comrade Sophie and getting an update on the Defund surveillance fight. And that is a collaboration between the Free Radicals and the Coalition, Stop LAPD Spying. So we're going to talk about that first, then we'll talk more about the report, and then we are going to, at the end, get into some more recent material that we've just obtained from LAPD about the data-driven policing tactics that are going on today, and looking at some of those forms that we've received and what we're finding. So that's the overview of what we're going to be talking about. But before we get started on that, and just to kick it off, we will just take a look at one of the Coalition's grassroots organizing principles. All 10 of our grassroots principles can be found on the Coalition's website. And please do take a look at those. But for now, we're just going to be taking a look at one of those principles, and I'll pass it over to Nina for a look at one of those.
Hey y'all, it's nice to see you all. I'm going to screen share real quick so folks can see the screen. And so that's just the flyer for the event, and Tiff kind of just gave a little bit of a recap about the agenda for today. But I'm going to start us off with one of the statement of principles, and we'll be doing this in the beginning of each of the webinars to kind of just ground us in the statement of principles, or specifically how the Coalition wants to ground itself. So number 5 for our principles is the fundamental needs and rights. From the land to the people, every being has fundamental needs and rights, and we honor the sacredness of life when we fight to ensure everyone's basic necessities are met, including healthy food, clean water, housing, clothing, education, healthcare, dignity, safety, movement, and expression. And we'll go into a little bit, and so in this conversation, we'll be talking about as well housing and how policing isn't just the policing programs and just how police terrorize our communities, or how they continue to surveil and target folks from our communities, but also how the state and all these other things like housing, immigration, are also part of the fight. When we talk about abolition, when we talk about making sure that our communities are safe and their needs are met, I think that that's also something that we also have to ground ourselves in, the fact that we're not just living single. We don't live single issued lives. And so also with that, it's really important that we do uplift and we talk about the intersectional pieces of that and how those struggles are also connected. I have the QR code as well, but you can find the full zine both for printing as well as for the online version. You can go to stoplapdspying.org to access that, or if you would want, you can also take a photo of the QR code right here, and it'll also send you a direct link as well to the statement of principles. And I'll pass it back to Tiff so we can talk a little bit more about the next steps.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nee. Okay, so now we will be actually handing it over to Sophie. If you're ready, Sophie, to get an update on the fight to defund surveillance.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tiff. And I think Shakir and maybe Hamid and I can tag team this together, and anyone else who wants to jump in who's been working on the campaign. But just for some background, we've been working on the Defund Surveillance campaign as a joint project between the Coalition and Free Radicals, which is an activist collective based around science and social justice, which came out of our work together in the fight against predpol and data-driven policing and surveillance. And as part of the defund surveillance fight, one of the things we've been working on is a zine that's about LAPD's budget creep, which started about a year ago, and it's been a growing work in progress for that span of time. It's wild because it feels like it's been both. It feels wild that it's already been a year and also that it's been only a year. But the work really came out of the research that we're doing about the funding that the LAPD has, both for their surveillance infrastructure, as well as the ways that LAPD's surveillance infrastructure is supplemented by funding that doesn't just come from the LAPD's own budget, but also other departments, and then the ways that the LAPD's budget has grown, LAPD's surveillance budget, of which their entire budget is connected to surveillance, and has grown as a result of not just the things that show up in their budget requests to city council, but also through things like donations that then get grandfathered in and other things like that. So the ways that the LAPD's budget has grown in just a multitude of ways. I have it open, but I don't know if Shakir, if you want to take a spin through the zine, and then also anything that you want to add. I don't know, I know Xing was our illustrator on the budget creep zine. I don't know if they're here with us today, but also just want to shout out the work of that whole group of folks.
Yeah, no, big shout out to Xing, who we should share their information because yeah, they illustrated the whole thing and did an amazing job. Sophie, if you want to maybe walk through the zine, and then I can add about just where the campaign is at, and can talk about the also another piece that's related, the lawsuit and some records we got and all that. But if you want to do the zine, then I can do that. And Xing wasn't able to make it tonight, that's why. Yeah, so they're not here to share it.
Yeah, sure. Let me arrange my screen in Windows so that I can figure out the best way to screen share this. All right. Let's see. Here we go. Can you all see that? It's just open in preview right now. You can see the PDF. All right, so here's our creep in chief. Let Mayor Garcetti. And it starts out with the cover page shows that over half of LACD's unrestricted money is spent on policing, and that actually increased 48% during Garcetti's term. And you can see what he's creeping over here is that budget itself, which we can see again here, their full budget and then their operating budget. So we start off talking about how 50% of the entire city's budget goes to LAPD, and especially in this time of truly lacking responses to COVID and housing and all of these other crises that are happening in the city, that LAPD is not only getting 50% of the city's money, but also asking for more. And the reason we use a parking ticket is because part of the unrestricted funding for the city comes from parking violations and any kind of parking fees that we pay. So every time you pay a parking ticket, 50% of that is going to LAPD essentially. And then, yes, just a little bit more of an in-depth look at how LAPD's budget has grown. And you can see that the full budget, including pensions and benefits, goes up to past 3 billion, and then their operating budget is cresting at almost 2 billion. And then one of the things that we heard about at one of the police commission meetings is this study that was it the city or the LAPD commissioned that was about the city residents, I guess, like attitudes towards the police, and incredibly for a study that was commissioned by the state, essentially, I think, they found that 62% supported redirecting money away from the police, and then 36 or almost 37% supported completely dismantling the police. The budget zine also came out of us just really struggling with understanding the budget process. This was something that we talked about a lot, as the budget process is not transparent, and our goal is not to get a transparent budget process, right? Our goal together as the community is to understand the budget process so that we can call for the complete defunding of the police. The end goal is not for transparency, but it's also just buck wild that pretty much nobody in the city also understands the budget process. And so we do a little bit of talking about that. And I'll go a little bit quicker for the rest of this. But we talk about how the city budget snowballs as a result of things like donations made to the LAPD that then get looped into the LAPD's budget in future years. And one of the things that we were trying to figure out is what the base budget for the LAPD was. So basically what happens every year is that the LAPD proposes a budget for the new year, and then their full budget that was approved for the last year gets rolled over into the new year. And this forms what's known as like the base budget for the coming year. And we were trying to get a breakdown of what was in the base budget because it could include things like contracts that the LAPD was requesting more money for in the current year when they were already getting money for it, or there could just be any number of things that the city didn't actually need funding for, that the LAPD was just getting money for. And we went to all sorts of different parts of the LA city. We went to the police commission, to the controller, to the city administrative officer, and they basically all pointed us to different parts of the rest of the city government. And that's also related to a little bit of what Shakir is going to talk about in a bit. And so then the second part is on, right, so there's charitable donations, how they become line items and liabilities. and they are framed as different gift horses for the LAPD, one of which is an actual horse. And you can, at your leisure, take a look through these different gift horses. And then this part is a field guide to LAPD's budget creeps, where we talk about how the different city departments basically contribute to LAPD's budget without it showing up in LAPD's budget by doing things like paying for police officers in parks or in libraries. So that's actually funding that the LAPD is getting for police officers that doesn't show up in their final budget. And it's not just officers, of course, it's also the surveillance infrastructure, the data gathering, and even revenue for the police department. So you can take a look through this. We talk about the housing authority, library system, homeless services, the MTA, and that's obviously, of course, not where it stops. There are many other ways that the city departments are deeply interconnected. I am not as familiar with this section, so maybe Shakir Hamid can step in for this, but we end with just a call to action to defund LAPD, defund surveillance, abolish the police, join the fight, get involved, hit the streets, come to these webinars, stay involved, and then we wanted to make this as something that was an evergreen call to action, that we could include just sheets that had more specific information about specific fights during any election cycle or budget cycle. And so we intentionally left any kind of like council member information off of this version of the zine, with the assumption that we'll be including different like extra materials as we distribute it for future events. Okay, I spent a lot of time on the beginning parts of this and then kind of sped through the rest. So Shakir, Hamid, or anyone else, I'll hand it over to y'all for any extra stuff you want to add, any context, and then to talk about the lawsuit and where everything else in the campaign is at.
Yeah, thank you, Sophie. And yeah, Sophie really facilitated not just the research and the campaign, and all the efforts that went into this, kind of basically starting last year around the time, shortly after the uprising, we started the coalition and Free Rads kind of started wanting to dissect and just make sense of LAPD's budget to kind of help inform the demands to reduce and cut and defund, divert that funding. And so I think this zine is really is meant to be kind of sharing what we learned about, one, the budget process, and kind of two, well, one, the budget process itself, like how, like the political operation of how the budget keeps growing, and what hoops they go through, and kind of these different strategies that they have for increasing their funding year over year while kind of defying public input, as well as kind of these dynamics of what the numbers mean in terms of how the previous year's budget gets rolled over, how there's parts of the funding that live in other parts of the budget, how the kind of different, like sort of accounting tricks and political tricks that they use to keep this kind of constantly growing, this creep of budget growth that you see here on here, that during Garcetti's time it grows. It grew 48%. So that's what this zine's about, kind of dissecting like the process and the political dynamics of how the budget grows over time. At the same time, I mean, and part of this was motivated by as we were trying to get records and information about what's in the budget, found that that those records are really hard to find, that even different city agencies didn't really have them. The police commission that votes through the budget kind of had no idea what's actually in the bulk of the budget. They just kind of were reviewing like a very limited piece of it, the piece that's the things that they're adding every year. And that's kind of one of the dynamics that contributes to it just keeps snowballing, because this year they're going to come in with a $3.2 billion budget, next month, and what they're going to do is ask for that to be expanded. All they're going to explain is the additional amount that they need to that they want to add to that without any explanation of the previous. So I think, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say is that this zine and this kind of process over the last year has really helped educate us on the kind of the budgeting process and the political dynamics of the budget. What we also did around the same time is, and the zine kind of talks about, we filed all these PRA requests. All the agencies here pointed us to each other, like the different Spider-Man, you know, saying that it's the other agency that has it. So we ended up suing all three of them, saying, okay, like obviously one of you has it, so where are all the budget records? We filed that lawsuit in February. We've been kind of since then over the months fighting with them about it and trying to, you know, use the case to kind of negotiate more records from them and get them to actually go find them and go provide this itemization that they've been acting like doesn't exist. And so finally, in the last couple months, they finally started finding these records and sharing them with us. So we've, through that, obtained a set of records that's basically like the kind of full itemization year by year of LAPD's full budget, not just the amount that they're trying to increase, but the entire budget, what's called the base budget. So we have those records now. We have it, one for this current year, as well as the past 12 or so years. So that's a lot of kind of complicated accounting records that we've been you know, fighting hard to get. So now we have them, and we actually need to start analyzing them. We've been starting to dissect them a little bit, but if that's something that anyone's interested in, either because one, you have kind of, you know, interest in looking at numbers and accounting and spreadsheets, or just even if you don't have that technical expertise, just looking at these, and, you know, it's a bunch of just, you know, lists of shit that they spend money on. I think if anything, like and I don't have any accounting knowledge or anything, but what just jumps out at me is just seeing like, what the fuck, you know, they're spending this much on boot shine or whatever it is, you know, whatever it might be. So, sorry, I got muted. This always happens when I'm talking too much.
I'm so sorry, Shakir, my bad. I was just trying to hit, somebody was trying to enter, so. Yeah.
So yeah, so you know, those records that either if you have that technical knowledge, or even if you just want to start getting into looking deeply and trying to think creatively about, okay, this is all the stuff that they're spending on, this is what we need to mobilize against, hit us up. We're happy to share those and start kind of researching those together, because we really need to gear up for as the zine kind of talks about and breaks down. So the next budget process is starting with in mid to late November, LAPD is going to release their proposed budget for the next year, and then that's going to get voted through the police commission. Last year, the police commission literally released that document on Friday, late afternoon on Friday. I remember I was like in the line getting a COVID test back then, and then they voted on it, you know, first thing Tuesday morning. So we just kind of had the weekend to dissect it. This year we're a little ahead because we have all of these records on the full base budget that we got from the lawsuit, but that's what we need to start analyzing together. So if anyone's interested in joining that work group to start dissecting that, you know, hit us up, and I think it's an opportunity to kind of just be creatively researching and analyzing these records. And the lawsuit, by the way, yeah, so as we got most of this to the lawsuit, we're going to be announcing, we're currently trying to negotiate with the city about the legal fees that they owe. So we're working on that, but otherwise we should be announcing the success in that case pretty soon too.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks so much, you all. And it's super exciting. So it sounds like that is going to be released tomorrow morning. Is that what you said in the chat there, Hamid?
Well, maybe I was speaking ahead of myself because I wouldn't know how to upload it. So I'm just trying to ease our way into it. So because the print version probably we won't have for a little bit, but we can post the online version.
I can share it in the chat over here, right? Can I do that?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I could. We could do
Yeah.
that.
Why don't I do that? But yeah, we just need to format it into the print version, and that requires a couple more steps.
Awesome. That's really exciting, though. So much great work there. Thanks so much, you all. That's really exciting. Any questions on that for folks before we move on to the next section? So any questions on for the defund surveillance team?
Yeah, I have a question. So who do I contact to, you know, analyze those numbers and do that whole stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, you should here. I'll share. I'm just typing the coalition's email address. That's the best way to get connected. So just email us, then maybe we can find time to talk and share the records with you. And that goes for everyone.
Okay, thank you.
And for folks who want to share the zine when it's when it's like uploaded somewhere online, Hamid, it'll be uploaded to like a new tab on the Defund Surveillance website, right? So if you want to just bookmark the defundsurveillance.org, I think also defundsurveillance.com redirects to the same page, then it'll be up there as a tab when it's uploaded.
And there's a question here. Steve, you just want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question?
You kind of got me off guard. Yeah, I can. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. The question was if that budget you're looking at also includes other agencies. I made an example of environmental health, and they obviously work in collusion with PD for doing the sweeps, for instance. But does that one budget you're looking at include those other agencies, or is it limited only to PD? If so, then it's not inclusive of the policing budget within LA. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, totally. So the budget that $3 billion number is just the like LAPD official budget. And there's a chapter in the zine that talks about some of the other areas where the police budget expands beyond the like official police budget. But also, Steve, if you have other examples of places that we should be looking for those additional areas that should be counted as like the policing budget, I would say also get in contact with Shakir and Hamid and the team and share that knowledge. And maybe we can make a version 2 of the zine that has more of that. But it's definitely something we're thinking about. But don't have, of course, maybe never will have the full grasp of like what the LAPD's true policing budget is. And then Shakir, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, no, that just wanted to add. So yeah, that's exactly we have in the zine, we kind of talk about the dynamic of stuff, you know, funding that is in other budgets of other agencies that's being spent on policing, including in the library's budget, in the HACLA budget, the Housing Authority, in the sanitation, like Steve's talking about, and all these other agencies, recreation and parks. But yeah, I think the next step, and this is what I would love to this is what I think we're starting the journey that we're about to go on, looking at these new records, is really dissecting the details of what all the spending is, and the, you know, how the different spending has grown, what we are demanding at the end, the harms and the violence and the you know, the critical, the deadly impact of all of that, of all of those spending items. So that's including through, like Steve was kind of talking about, of how the sweeps, that's a part of their budget that exists in another agency and is you know, causing so much displacement, death, and harm to communities. So yeah, that's kind of like dissecting that harm is what we're hoping to do next.
Awesome. Any other questions from folks?
No, just maybe just putting out a call to action, Tiff, just to folks that if you all know other people in your orbit and your network who are looking to look at these documents, I mean, who are number crunchers and maybe help us decipher some of these things, I think that'll be great. That'd be great. So thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much for that. All right, folks. Okay, well, that was great. Thank you so much, Sophie, for joining us. It's great to see you on here. And okay, so now we are going to turn to our next section of the agenda. That would be looking at the report. And we're going to be talking a little bit more now about this report that is going to be released this November. This is the Coalition's report. We've been updating on it for a while now. The title of this report is Automating Banishment, the Policing and Surveillance of Looted Land. And I know we have a number of folks here tonight who have contributed to that. It has been the work of a number of different folks. And what we wanted to do right now is just spend a little bit of time. I'm going to just do a really super brief what is in the report, like what's the overview, not spend a lot of time on that, and then just touch on when is it released, how will folks be able to access it, and then we're also going to have Chris, who is with us, share one of the ways that folks will be able to access information, which will be online through a website that Chris has developed themselves. And so we'll take a look at that. And then we wanted to hear from folks about our plans for launching and our plans for outreach. We'd love to be really engaging with folks with this information and getting it out there. And we have a few different ideas about that. And we'd love to just kind of spend some time thinking about that and talking about that together. And I can get us started off, but Shakir and Hamid, you have been working on this a lot as well. So I would love to also be hearing any thoughts or anything that you would like to talk about for this section as well. So yeah, so we're looking at a cover now of that report. Again, that is Automating Banishment, the Surveillance and Policing of Looted Land. And this really talks about the role of policing in gentrification and displacement. And the focus of that is looking at LAPD's data-driven policing and looking at the different tactics and technologies that have been used here in Los Angeles in different neighborhoods. Thank you, Sophie. And we really look at those data-driven policing tactics. We look at them at a detailed level, but we also put them within the context of history, and especially looking at how policing has been used historically to stalk and to surveil folks, and specifically Black folks, Brown, Indigenous folks, and poor folks, with the purpose of criminalizing folks and separating people from their homes, displacing folks, of land theft. And all of this, of course, is for the purpose of colonization and for the purpose of profit and the generation of wealth. And again, we look at specifically how this has been done here in Los Angeles. This report is a continuation of our fight against data-driven policing, against predictive policing. It does build on our 2018 report. That was before the bullet hits the body, and that was looking at LAPD's predictive policing programs that were ultimately shut down due to community pressure. And this builds on that by going even deeper into how those were being used, and again looking at what was the impact. And we further look at some of the neighborhoods that we take a look at are the Skid Row community. We also look at how it was used in South Central with a focus on the Crenshaw corridor. And we also take a look at how communities have been fighting back and also have been resisting police, resisting these technologies, and fighting back over time as well. And we also look at the role of developers in all of this. And I'll just pause here for a moment and see Shakir or Hamid just in this moment, as we're kind of giving folks just a real brief overview of like what they can expect, like what are some of the themes that are in this report. Is there anything else that you'd like to raise now?
Yeah, I can, just a couple things, and it's a really dense kind of rich report that there's a lot going on, and it's been developed, like Tiff was saying, by a work group, the Orlando Policing Work Group, over the course of a long time. Like I think the work group kind of started forming it was before the pandemic in kind of January 2020, and then And then really started diving into this research over the following year, and started kind of writing this, I think, in last summer or last fall. And over time, that's been kind of dozens of people contributing in different ways, contributing research, contributing their knowledge, contributing kind of the concepts, doing the drafting, the editing, other writing. So that it's just it's been kind of amazing to be part of this process of collective kind of study and collective analysis and research. So I think the two things I just add theme wise, I mean, one is kind of capture a little bit in the title, and is just kind of connecting when we're talking about banishment, displacement, development, really in a deep way, kind of connecting that to the legacy and the continuity of settler colonialism and conquest, and how today's policing practices are a direct continuation of settler colonialism, as well as feeding off of kind of tactics and methodologies that are developed in U.S. imperialism today, including the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and kind of other imperial wars over time. And so those are connections that I think a lot of us are we think about and we're sensitive to and aware of, but what we really wanted to do in this report is really kind of provide the concrete links of that, including like just the direct kind of links to U.S. military funding and theory and practice, and how that's being imported into local policing, as well as kind of developing that in the same way that we know that policing today is a continuation of the work of slave patrols, of enforcing apartheid, enforcing Jim Crow segregation. That policing is also a continuation of practices of eliminating indigenous cultures and the history of looting and stealing land. So that's kind of that's throughout the report. And then the other thing is kind of looking at how what has been called by LAPD and others predictive policing, how that's now kind of evolving into a 2.0 of predictive policing, which is now kind of more broadly thought of as just data-driven policing generally, and how we really wanted to dive into how that reform and repackaging is happening, looking at the role of academic institutions, nonprofits, different kind of advocacy groups in literally in supplying the kind of concepts and ideas for just repackaging the same harm that they previously kind of celebrated as this is predictive policing. It's a really exciting new trend of police reform. Once the community kind of organized against that, dismantled that, exposed the racist violence of predictive policing, now they're coming up with saying new concepts like one that, oh, we're no longer using policing to predict crimes, we're just using it to make sure that we're acting accountably or transparently or whatever. It's the same exact systems, they just put a different spin on it. As well as how they're now weaving into predictive or into data-driven policing, how they're combining it with what the police call community policing. And this refers to the notion of kind of embedding police deep in our communities, where they monitored people's relationships, map out kind of who knows who's doing what, who's associated with who, different groups, relationships, mapping out power, as well as trying to kind of pacify criticism of police. And in that way, really securing kind of assent and securing kind of more political will for continuing the same ongoing violence of policing and securing more resources and powers for police. So that's all part of the evolution of predictive policing through reform. And that's another big part of this report, is watching how that's evolving and unfolding.
Yeah, thank you so much for adding that, Shakir. Hamid, do you have any additional thoughts or themes that you'd like to lift up, or anything about the report?
Yeah, just thank you, Trev, and thank you both for laying it out. Just building upon the comments that you have shared, I think the biggest takeaway of this report, which has been the tradition at the coalition as well, has been for us to really think a little bit more when we are thinking of surveillance and think beyond our what is typically an orientation towards surveillance about invasion of privacy, violating constitutional rights. That's been the general sort of orientation that has happened. So I think what this report really compels us to think is that at the center, at the core of surveillance is information gathering and storing and sharing, and how that information then gets used to criminalize people, how that information gets used to in this case, what we are showing is to banish people from land. So many times, people don't, those connections are not made that, yeah, maybe my First Amendment right were violated, freedom of speech, or Fourth Amendment around just whatever those are. But I think that the surveillance regime is so vast and then it's so deep, and that's why we always say that that's really the tip of the policing knife. So in essence, and I don't know if Shakir, you lifted that, but how this shows the intersection of even the legal context of this intersection of criminal law and property law, and how surveillance and intelligence gathering is so central to push people and to move people. How and lastly, I would also say that it also reminds us to check ourselves when we use the term technology, because many times just by using technology, it reduces surveillance to just maybe our cell phone or social media or whenever we are on some sort of an equipment. But analog type surveillance has always been there, whether it's undercover, whether it's informants, whether it's just whoever, or just observing people. So how these things intersect with other draconian measures that have been codified, like nuisance abatements, like other forms of policing about crime prevention through environmental design, which are very analog-based sort of surveillance as well. Or so data collection and data gathering, and then using this language of data-driven policing, we are looking to expose and flip the script on the police and the city itself, that this is all bullshit. It's just a facade, and you're masking the deep harm that is causing people. So I think after so long, I find this report to be very exciting. Yes, it's long, but I think this is serious stuff. People are being killed and people are being murdered. So as a result of these data-driven policing. So this is targeted killing that's going on. So I just wanted to throw that in there. And it's going to be released on November 8th, Monday morning at 11 o'clock. We'll have a press conference and we invite people to be there, and then can't thank enough. And I know, Steve, at one point you were involved in this too. So there's been dozens of people that's been stated, and it's that labor of love and that commitment that we need to honor as well. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Hamid, for lifting all that. And that reminds me as well, as we're talking about the reasons why we're doing this and what motivates us to do this, we do also have our demands in the final section of the report, and that'll be something that we share tonight as well, just to be sharing those demands with folks, because we're not just looking into this and doing this research just to be finding out how exactly violent police are, in more detail. It's to be exposing this, to be making those connections, to be uncovering it, and then to be sharing that information with folks so we can be going after these systems, building power with folks. And so we are, and we're making our demands to be defunding this, to be tearing it down, to be dismantling it, to be replacing it. So not replacing it with something better, to be creating those alternatives to policing. So those are some of the things that we're seeking to do with this research and with this report. And we're really excited to be doing that soon. Yeah, Hamid has just shared the when, in terms of when it will be released, as in terms of how folks will be able to access it. It will be available online. It will also be in terms of it'll be a report, like a PDF report It will also have its own website that folks will be able to navigate. And we are going to also be thinking about different ways to make the information accessible for folks who are not, able or wanting to be reading, sit down and be reading a long document, but just to be kind of talking about what is in there as well. So we're going to be thinking and talking about that as well. But what I'd like to do now is just pass it over to Chris, who is with us tonight and who has been a part of this work for a few years now, actually since Operation Laser, since we were fighting Operation Laser. And Chris, if you'd like to share some of what you have been working on the website and with the map that you've created.
Yeah, absolutely. Hope everyone's doing well. So yeah, so as another way that so basically on a report, we reference this map that we created where based on all the California Public Records Act requests, we got information for where's all the laser zones, where are the PEPO hotspots, where are the anchor points, and we also investigated different sections within or around laser zone where folks were shot or killed by police, basically just like all the impacts in different neighborhoods of like predictive policing, data-driven policing, and the ways that they banish folks. So we felt like it was extremely useful to create a map out of it, and I kind of wanted to show you a quick preview of the map we've created. So let's see. Okay, so yeah, so this is the overall Los Angeles, and then within this map, we have central hotspots, central division, Hollenbeck division, all the laser zones, community safety partnership zones, and if you start zooming in, you start going through the different laser zones. You start looking into all the different anchor points, reading some stories about folks who were shot or killed in laser zones, more about like the different mission sheets we got from Palantir. And you start looking into like Skid Row and the PEPO hotspots surrounding Skid Row, and kind of just making these connections and seeing different overlaps between like community safety partnership zones and basically a lot of the things that we discussed on the report. Yeah, that's all I wanted to share for now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. Okay, so that's a little bit about what is in the report and the types of information. And I'll see if anyone has any questions about that.
I have a question. Where can we see that map? Like, is it online or is it going to be online?
Yeah, so once we release the report, it's going to be released on online version. And in this online version, you're going to be able to read the report and also access directly this map.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're really excited for that tool to be able to use that as well. And so what we'd like to now do is just share a few ideas about, so as we said, we've said it over and over, it's a lot of information. It's when we're talking about this report, it's about 100 pages long. It is a lot of information, but that's okay. It's kind of, we've got it broken down into sections, and each one is just a really meaningful body of work, amount of information, and just something that we've been talking about. Those of us that have been working on it, and kind of folks that we've shared it with, is like, what are some of the best ways to be going through this? And we'd just love to hear if folks do have any ideas, and also just about like what makes things more accessible to you. Like if there's, I have plenty of reports from organizations that I really admire and love, and I know that they have a lot of great information in them, but I don't always get to them. But thankfully, there are different ways that folks share that information online or in conversation or discussions, and so you can still kind of learn about what is in there. So I'd love to hear if folks have different thoughts or ideas about ways that they get information, from a report or from something like this. Some of the things that we've been thinking about are possibly having like community discussions, kind of breaking it down into different sections. As we said, there's like 6 different sections of the report, I think 5 or 6. And Like one of them is looking at like the historical context. One of them looks at Skid Row community and how data-driven policing was launched there. We look at South Central community and the Crenshaw corridor, how policing was directed there with data-driven policing. We also look at the next generation of data-driven policing. So it is kind of broken down into sections. And so something we'd been considering was possibly doing different community discussions or doing a reading group. And then some of the questions that come up when we kind of put these out there, we're like, well, what would that look like? And what would we do? And we think these are all really great ideas. And I know we'll be able to figure these out. But I'm wondering if folks, I just kind of wanted to pause and see if folks do have ideas about what some of these things might look like. What is a way that you might like to learn more or to engage with it? So I'll just pause here for a moment and see if folks have any thoughts or feedback.
Yeah, I attended a workshop recently hosted by Project NIA and Interrupting Criminalization. And it was on transformative justice, and it was outlining like the patterns that people were doing throughout the country. And so something that I think could be helpful that I learned from there is like having a gathering where we're learning the information and then grappling with questions of like how it can be like practical for like practically implemented, like how we practice the information that we gather, and then having some sort of like PowerPoint or something of that sort to then share with other people, and then like we can go and share with our friends, which is what I did. Like they made it accessible to share the information they shared there, and I shared it with some friends, and people are interested in like learning it together. So it's like a smaller group that came from this larger space, and perhaps that's something that we can also do with this info.
Yeah, those are great ideas, and I'm jotting those down right now. Those are some really great ideas. I love that. And I'm thinking too that we can also be engaging with folks, some of our friends that are artists that also have like ideas about, how you would interpret some of this through art or turn that into an art piece. So that's an idea of a conversation as well. Any other ideas from folks, or perhaps workshops or groups that you've been involved with, ways to explore information or read through or go through information together?
Well, maybe just to flesh out a little more, we're when I see Laura, you have your hand. I can come back after I just say this, which is, yeah, we're also kind of thinking about like curriculums and working with educators and academics possibly on kind of how do we get this analysis and knowledge out to students, to youth, to even kind of urban planning people and but the whole range. We're working with, we're already kind of having some conversations with some, I think, high school teachers and stuff about how to even the mapping that Chris was showing. How do we bring students into doing that work and kind of mapping these systems and harm in their own communities, as well as kind of the analysis in the report. And then I think on what Tiff has been saying about the different kind of reading groups and study circles, I think it would be really cool to just have like a series of those with different groups in maybe different community spaces across the city. Could pick up different components of it. Like, for example, there's a section where we talk about the citywide nuisance abatement program. So, we could get with like communities that have been organizing against those, or where we're talking about policing at the Crenshaw Mall. We could, do something around Baldwin Hills, the Crenshaw Quarter. Or we have a section on the business improvement districts that is focused on downtown and Chinatown as well. And so, so I know, if you're in a group that would be interested in kind of co-hosting one of those, like a reading group, reading circle, even like a kind of social media live thing, or I think it'd be really cool to start doing these in person. And I think, hopefully we can do that safely. Yeah, feel free to speak up now or hit us up when yeah, to start planning those.
And then did we have someone who wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, I think Laura had their hand up. So feel free to unmute, Laura.
Yeah, I'm not, obviously, I'm from Lansing, Michigan, so I'm a long ways from LA, sadly. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'll mute for just a second. I'm thinking that in other places, it would be good to get people looking at it as a model for working in their own cities, and to have reading groups and some opportunity to meet with people along the same lines, but more as a spur to doing some of the same thinking in their own communities. So taking it as a model of investigation and providing the opportunity to sort of coalesce around it.
Yeah, I think that's great. And yeah, I mean, these issues obviously are, they're appearing everywhere. That's true of the location-based policing, the relationships between policing and development, displacement, as well as how these different systems are being rebranded and kind of refined and reformed. So I think learning from, even as we've been starting to talk to people, they start saying, oh, like, where else is this happening? And we know some examples, but I think, it's probably happening in a lot more communities than we realize. And so that's what we need to that's why we need to build it out in different places. And we've been talking a little bit with some folks in the Bay Area about hosting kind of a like a reading group there, or workshop type thing there. But yeah, if there's others interested in other parts of the country or wherever, we're down.
Yeah, those are great ideas. Yeah, and when I think about workshops, I'd been thinking about, in person, because that's the last workshop I was in person. But yeah, it's we can be having them online as well, and be meeting with folks in different cities, and those are all great ideas. And thinking about the workshops, like another, just thinking about how when we're talking about these programs, it's like the programs that as we outline in the report, the programs that, even though they were dismantled, like key parts of the way that those programs functioned are still being continued today. Some of the same tactics are being used, a lot of the same technology, and so we still do have a lot of documents, some of which have never been kind of gone through. So that's something that we have talked about or been interested in doing as well. And if anyone would be interested in getting more information about how these programs had been functioning, how they'd been used by police in their neighborhood, definitely reach out to us, and we can perhaps talk about doing a workshop, or just having a conversation about sharing some of that information, or going through some of that information with folks. And that's something that we'd be interested to do. So yeah, definitely reach out to us. And so I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts or questions. Again, this is just thinking about the launch of the report coming out on the 8th, and just like how are some of the different ways we're going to be talking about that. But of course, this conversation is very much going to be continuing in the next few weeks. We're not quite there to the release yet. And we're just really excited and interested to be talking about it further in the upcoming weeks as well. I don't see any other questions. Okay, so I think if no one has any other questions about that or nothing else to add, then we can move on from the section where we're talking about the report. And definitely folks reach out to us and we will be updating folks about that. Oh, that's a great question. I forgot to mention, thank you, Laura. I forgot to mention, there is an executive summary. Folks have been working very hard on that. There is an executive summary and that will be available on November 8th as well. And that will be, I believe, about 14 or 15 pages. So that'll be kind of a shorter version of what's in the report and hopefully will be a good guide for folks. All right, and okay, so with that, I think we'll move on to the last section of our meeting today. And that is to be talking more about what is LAPD's data-driven policing program that they are using right now. We're going to be just sharing a little bit about what we learned from a recent PRA that was filed against LAPD to learn more about that program, and specifically looking at where this policing program is being targeted and how it's being focused on folks. And let's see, Nina, are you able to perhaps share the screen as we talk about what SARA is, just to remind folks?
Yeah, sure. Shortly.
Okay, cool. All right, so just to remind folks, all right, and I don't think Amira is with us any longer, but Amira was one of the folks that helped work on this diagram. And so when we're talking about LAPD's predictive policing or its data-driven policing, one of the ways that they like to create distance between the violence that they're actually conducting and themselves is they like to say that, of course, they have a process and that they apply this process, and that is the way that they police people. And the SARA model of policing is what is at the core of LAPD's data-driven policing tactics now. It was something that was used by LAPD for decades. It was actually used in Operation Laser. And again, what it allows them to do is to say that they are not biased, to give this impression that they are not actually biased, but that they are using this problem-solving model. And so what SARA stands for is scanning, analysis, response, and assessment. And we can kind of see that on the screen of this diagram. These are just the 4 different stages that LAPD kind of claims that they are using. And in terms of using SARA, how that's used is they call this their problem-based approach to policing. And essentially what they do is once they deem an area to be a so-called problem or to be associated with criminality, what they do is they then apply this model, or at least that's their story. That's what they tell us that they're doing. They apply the SARA model to something. They actually fill out a SARA project form on it. And they go through these stages of saying, what are we doing in the scanning process? What are we doing in the analysis and the response and the assessment? And what we've actually got here on our community pop-ed flyer or trifold is we've kind of laid out what those stages are, and we've kind of put what is actually going on there. So for the scanning, this of course is surveillance and spying, and there are different types of tools in the architecture of surveillance that gather that information from folks. And the analysis, we see the different types of ways that that information is gathered and shared and put in databases. Then in the response section, so this is actually where LAPD kind of decides what are the different types of violence that they're going to be directing at folks, and that comes in the form of missions, of patrols, of issuing a nuisance abatement against folks that would declare a location as a nuisance that could possibly result in someone being evicted. And then we have the assessment at the very end of it, and that is this is where they attempt to legitimize what is going on, and usually that assessment is done in collaboration with partners like UCLA, who are like conducting these assessments and basically saying, oh, this is working really well, this is great, and kind of giving it that legitimization that will allow it to keep expanding and to keep getting funded. So this is kind of the basic SARA model. And again, this is something that was used in Operation Laser. And the way it showed up in Laser was the LAPD would identify specific locations. And in Operation Laser, these were called anchor points. And cops would have to write up what was the strategy for that specific SARA location. So they had to fill out what are these stages. And what we're seeing today with data-informed community-focused policing is we're seeing that same model. So it's under a different program name, but we're seeing this SARA model come back as something that LAPD has deemed is successful. And again, they're kind of using it to say, oh, look, we have this program, we have this system, it's very well thought through, and to kind of give it this this air of legitimacy when we actually take a look at what they're doing, and when folks talk about what has been done to them, it's obviously very different. So that's kind of an overview of just like what is SARA, and so just transitioning to why we're talking about this today is that we did recently get information about where are some of these SARA projects, where are some of these locations that LAPD is targeting now with data-informed community-focused policing, and also looking at what are those tactics. So, and the way that we asked for that information was by listening to them give presentations about this. We knew that for every location, they had to fill out a SARA project form. So we asked for those reports, and we have gotten information on, I can't think about, probably about 10 of them so far. And just looking at them, I'll just share like some of the findings that we've gotten so far. And these are SARA, these are project forms that were mostly filled out from 2020, so from last year, and also from this year as well. So they're very recent. And some of the things that we've noticed so far is that some of the locations that are targeted, it could just be as small as an intersection or a store, just like one specific location, or in some cases, they're actually like a whole corridor or an entire street. So that was something that was surprising, because when LAPD launched this program, they were talking about how they were just going to be targeting like micro locations, and they were saying that the purpose of doing that using micro locations was to kind of minimize the saturation of police. So that's one way that we see that they are already lying about what they're doing, and also seeing how it's actually comparable to Operation Laser. Because some of the areas that they are targeting are actually the size of about a laser zone. Some additional things we're seeing are that although LAPD said that they were only going to be doing this, kind of opening these SARA projects and targeting areas with police for about 90 days, we've seen that in some cases they're actually opened for about a year. And again, LAPD initially said that the reason that they would be kind of having a shorter amount of time on this was to be minimizing the amount of police saturation of an area. But again, what we see is what they're actually doing is they are expanding them for up to a year. And in some cases, then opening that project again. So it's going to be even longer than a year in some cases. Additional things we're seeing is a very heavy targeting of encampments. And this was happening even during the pandemic. So like in June, July of 2020, we're seeing that some of the locations that were targeted were encampments. And police were ordering sweeps on them. Essentially, like people had nowhere to go, and they were ordering sweeps on certain locations, ordering heavy patrols, and that has been very much ongoing this year as well. So we're seeing still the targeting of poverty, and additional things we're seeing let's see, we're also seeing that there has been, in at least 2 cases, there are some locations that do have an overlap with locations that were targeted under Operation Laser. So in one case, one of the areas that is being targeted today was also an anchor point under Operation Laser. And another area was part of a laser zone. So again, we're seeing this continuity of how the same locations are targeted over and over again, but under the guise of a different policing program. So those are a few of the things that we've seen so far. And I think I'll pause now and just see if anyone has questions. And I can look and see what additional findings we have, but I'll just pause for a moment and see, because I know this is a lot of information, and it's also very jargony, this whole SARA project form. But essentially it's just what we're wanting folks to understand and know, and I'm sure folks already have a good sense of this, is that it's essentially, it's the same tactics as has been used in the past, but under a different name. And as we say in our brochure, SARA is LAPD's way of reviving Operation Laser while pretending that it is more legitimate. Excuse me, I'm going to pause and take a drink of water, and I'll just see if anyone has any questions or comments. Okay, and then just looking at our notes, one additional finding. Hey, Susan, thank you. One additional finding that we saw from looking at these project sheets that they have was, again, just very much uncovering, you know, what they're actually doing versus what they're saying. And one thing that they say with data-informed community-focused policing was that they are going to use these project forms in a way that is going to be involving community, is going to be engaging community, and to be getting at the root causes of crime. So really going after those root causes of crime. But of course, when we look at what they're actually doing, they are applying the same old policing tactics that they've always used. A lot of it is just ordering extra patrols, high suppression, high visibility crime suppression patrols in areas, and some of the tactics are just mostly that in an area, and they do that for 3 to 6 months, and then they just sign off on the report. So so those are some of the things that we're finding so far, and we're going to obviously be keeping to dig on this. Last year, I think there were 90 different locations that had SARA project forms written up on them. I think we've received, maybe we're aware of about 10 of them. The eviction at Echo Park Lake, by the way, was also a SARA project. So yeah, this is something that we're very much going to keep looking at, and just trying to get a better idea too of what they're doing at these locations, and to be exposing some of this terminology and some of these tactics, and to be learning more about how folks are being targeted and what's going on there. So again, if folks are interested in looking through any of this information, it's extremely interesting in terms of, like, it does list the actual locations and specific tactics. If folks are interested in joining with us, perhaps that you don't even want to look at the document yourself, but we could just be joining a conversation about it, about some of the things that we're finding and seeing, and additional questions that we have, then definitely send us an email. We would love to be talking with folks more about this as well. I'll just pause again and see if folks have any additional questions. And Shakir, am I right that this came from a PRA that was out of the community policing work group.
Yeah, that's right. I think we filed this a couple months ago, basically because we'd seen these kind of, I think maybe you had heard these references to these like kind of the workup records that they do to identify these SARA locations and document what they're doing in them. And then, yeah, we at the community policing work group, which is another thing that people should hit us up if they want to join. We're working on kind of a timeline, the history of LAPD's community policing programs and how they're related to counterinsurgency. Yeah, that's where we filed these.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was asking because I'm trying to remember, like they obviously didn't give us that, they didn't give us that many so far. So I'm wondering where the other 80 or however many, I'm wondering if did they say anything in terms of that more information was coming?
No, they had some excuses about why they're not sharing. So I think it might be interesting to look at it together. If folks want to do that. But
Yeah, that's a great idea. And Steve, I see your comment in terms of collusion with the DA. Yeah, and that's something that we see on that was a part of Operation Laser. And that's something that we're seeing with these most recent projects as well, in terms of like an area can be declared a SARA project or a neighborhood engagement area is the other name for them. And then on the same day, the local prosecutor, neighborhood prosecutor and city attorney's office are notified that any charges that come from LAPD or any arrests related or in those areas should be prosecuted to the fullest extent. And we're even seeing that with areas that are encampments and things like that. So that collaboration is still very much ongoing. And I'm sorry, Shakir, were you about to share something?
yeah, here, I'll share it. So just to give people, just to break down kind of how they deal with these things. So they actually know they for this one, they just gave us the records and they said, the department has conducted a search and providing with records responsive to your request. They say they're redacting some of the private information like addresses and phone numbers, but they don't say they're withholding any they're withholding any records, just some redaction. So that's probably a lot of what Tiff you were talking about is redacted. Another thing, so I actually hadn't noticed this before. So they say that another SARA project for the from out of the Rampart area related to Echo Park that they filed in another request. And this was, I don't know if, so a couple months ago we had seen when Echo Park Lake or the park opened again, there were these LAPD cadets who were just like handing out these weird little maps and saying that the maps showed how much crime there was, but the maps were kind of nonsense. And we took a close look at the map, and they were actually clearly kind of maps that have been produced by that were part of the SARA project and kind of, some of this crime analysis. So I don't think we filed this. I think this is someone else, the request that I'm looking at now. So that this wasn't the coalition, someone else requested this. And here I'll show, we also got this other, so it produced, I don't know if Tiff, if this was included in what you were in those records. This is another SARA report for the Echo Park. And this is, looks like it's from September to December of 2020.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, so this is quite interesting. It's documenting their whole history of interaction with the neighborhood Friends of Neighborhood Watch, with the council district, with Parks and Rec, with the park rangers, all the foot beats, all the, yeah. So it's just like a whole log of all the shit that they did before, up until December. Oh no, it goes all the way up to June. Yeah, it goes actually beyond the raid too. So this is another one of these.
Wow. Yeah, that would be super interesting to look at.
Shakir, was that in 2147 or 4147, whatever the number was?
Yeah. Yeah. Did we file 4147?
I gotta look back. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think so. So I think there's someone else. Yeah.
Yeah, so many PRAs.
I think I just wanted to quickly, if I could, make a comment, Tiff, that I think, and that's what you alluded to and lifting, and we're also doing a whole timeline, is this language of community policing, which is such a fraud. And I know, Steve, you posted a comment too, that it's similar to counterinsurgency operations, and community policing by itself is rooted in counterinsurgency, and even in the data-informed community-focused policing. And I'm not sure if that is going to be, is that highlighted in the report, Shakir, where we kind of allude to the counterinsurgency manual from the US Army and how that language has been used. So it's, if not word by word, it's pretty much the same thing. And this was the counterinsurgency manual that was released in 2010 by General Petraeus, who was at the time, I guess, the Viceroy of Iraq. So then how the LAPD and law enforcement is using that counterinsurgency manual from Iraq's occupation and using that language in their own data-informed community-focused policing program in Los Angeles, and how they will deal with people in housing projects. So, and this is under the language of community policing and then community safety partnerships. So I think in a sense, in the US, all across, and even in our nonprofits, in our social justice movement as well, there are people who are still falling into this trap of community policing. So yeah, I mean, just wanted to raise that it's all about counterinsurgency and infiltration. Thank you, Susan. Exactly about infiltration. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, thank you for sharing that, Shakir. And yeah, please, folks, if you have any interest in joining us to look more at those documents, or just to be talking more about this, and to be, we're just kind of getting into this and uncovering what is, yes, read the report, or join us in conversation about the report as well. But yeah, definitely we're in the process now of kind of figuring out what is data-informed community-focused policing, and we know what they say it is, but learning more about where they're targeting, how they're targeting folks, and uncovering that as well. Next month they are going to be releasing the budget. They are going to be asking for more money for community safety partnerships, for all of these programs. We know they're going to be expanding these different programs and tactics, and we are going to be, of course, demanding that they be defunded and dismantled and shut down. And we're definitely interested in continuing to learn more about what they're doing specifically with these programs. And yeah, so please send us an email if you'd like to join us in that. But unless anyone has any other questions about that, that was the last item on our agenda tonight.
I think Nina has something that we were looking to take a vote on.
Oh, all right. I will.
A banner.
Well, that sounds interesting. I will pass it to Nina.
Yeah, we just wanted to ask for y'all's advice. So for the release of the report, we're trying to get a banner put together to have for the day of November 8th. And so we just wanted to share with y'all the banner that we were working on, but we wanted to get feedback to see if y'all had any suggestions, or we were also thinking about putting the website as well on the bottom. But we just wanted to just share it out with the group and see if there were any suggestions for the banner or for any of the material. So that way we can keep that in mind before we have it for November 8th.
I think it looks awesome. I mean, it's our logo, which is always really cool, and I love the font. When you said the website, did you mean, would we put the Stop LAP Spying website or the website for the report?
Coalitions.
I'm not sure. That was actually Hamid's suggestion. So Hamid, did you? I was under the impression that it would be the Stop LAPD spying one, but
Yeah, I mean, it's because it's a coalition's banner, and I think we can get two, like a smaller one for automating banishment, and then put the website down there on that one too. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we need the coalition's website just because I think it's pretty easy to find it. I don't know. I mean, maybe Hamid, I don't know how many people are like, when you go to a website, are you like writing down the URL from the banner, or are you just Googling Stop LAP Spying? I think most people are finding websites by Googling.
I guess I'm old school, so you know, I mean, I just still go and look for websites, but I'm fine either way.
Probably not the audience with that, so I want to.
So I'm good either way.
cool. Okay. And then we are also, if folks have any suggestions as well, we're thinking about doing having monthly art sessions for like creating banners as well. So that's something that's currently in the works. So we'll definitely be keeping folks kind of announcing whenever we do start the art banner making nights.
There's a suggestion for a QR.
Oh yeah, QR scan would be a good way of including that too.
Okay, I'm glad you answered that, Nina, because I think Hamid and I were looking at each other like, what? Or maybe it was just me. All right.
Now I do kind of know what a QR is after having heard it for so long. So I think it just, but I still don't know how to deal with it. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, it's great. I know we have QR codes on our report, so just another way for folks to be getting that information. All right, well, that looks great, Nina, and I know that you had also done some really great artwork kind of earlier as well. So I'm wondering if any of those would be good on banners, but I'll probably take a look back at some of that artwork that you created for the report. Was there any other feedback that you needed from us, Nee?
No, that was mainly that specific banner. But if folks have any suggestions or would want to work on banners as well, I would be more than happy to work with folks and get some or prepare some for the event.
I think one slogan, and I think this came from Hamid originally related to the report, is really talking about data-driven policing and maybe like data-driven policing kills. So if we want to do something related to the report, that could be something for a banner.
Yeah, that's a great idea. All right. Okay, well, if no one has any additional feedback, I think we will. Yep, that's the slogan, data-driven policing kills, stop LAPD spying. And so we'll check and see if anyone has any community updates, any information folks would like to share about upcoming events. All right. Okay. Well, with that, then we will call it an evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, folks, and have a good rest of the evening. And we hope to see folks soon. Do please join us online or in person on November 8th or sooner than that. And thank you so much.
Thanks, Jiv.
Thanks, everybody. Wonderful work.
Thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Wali, good night.